Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. We're on episode 4 or 5 I guess. We're going through all the new detachments from the new codex for Necrons. And this one I'm most excited about. This is the Hypercrypt Legion we're going to talk about today. Now before we do get into this video, I keep forgetting to plug this. We do have a giveaway which only came out a few days ago. All you got to do is subscribe to the channel, like the video and comment on that particular video, which is the giveaway video. Link will be down in the description below. It'll be plastered all over the place. You'll find it somewhere. Get involved in the giveaway. There's 9 epic prizes. And yeah, it's free. So get involved. Anyway, back to the Hypercrypt Legion. I am excited about this one. This one was the one I've got my fingers crossed for. And I think it's going to be good. A lot of people are like, I don't like it. It's related to the monolith. It's related to the monolith. The monolith sucks. Blah, 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 blah. You don't need to think like that. Well, I'll give you a few reasons. First of all, you don't necessarily need the monolith. And second of all, the monolith is okay. But we'll get into that. Let's get into it. I'm getting carried away. So the detachment role is Hyperphasing. You can tell my voice is gone. I've been doing too many videos today. Hyperphasing is the detachment role. And effectively at the end of your opponent's turn, you can select a number of Necron units from your army that are not within engagement range. And you pull them off the battlefield. So if you're playing an incursion game, it's up to 2. If you're playing a strike force game, it's up to 3. And an onslaught game, it's up to 4. There is a way to get an extra one. It's a stratagem. We'll talk about that in a moment. And once you've done that, you put them into strategic reserves. And then if you want to, on your next turn, you can bring them back in. You don't have to. It's just an option. So why that is good is, well, my throat has really gone. Why that is good is, while they're off the table, you're of course going to be getting your secondary objective cards in your command phase. You're going to see what you need to do. And if you've got, say, investigate signal, deploy teleport home, or capture enemy outpost, bloody bloody blah, no man's land, you know what you need to do. You know where you need to go. You've got units off the tabletop. They can come in, do the job, do the secondary card, score you the points. And it gets better than that because if you have the deep strike ability, they can come in via deep strike. They don't have to come in off strategic reserves if they've got the deep strike ability. And there's a way of adding deep strike to a unit as well. So it's really nice. So what units is this detachment good for? Well, it's good for the secondaries. That's not a unit, but it's good for secondaries. It's good for the monoliths. It's got a lot of synergy with the stratagems with the monolith. It's a great all-rounder really, because you can be pulling off any units, whether it's your deep strike units such as Praetorians, Deathmarks, Hexmark Destroyers. Maybe it's your Catan charge. You'll be pulling loads of those off and bringing them back in. So maybe if you're playing multiple Catan lists, that's the one for you. So yeah, let's get into the enhancements, I guess. Let's get into the enhancements. So the first one is a Risen Tyrant. We're not playing Tyranids, but it's a Risen Tyrant. So you're basically giving it reroll, or you're giving reroll to your hit rolls of a 1. And if they've just arrived onto the battlefield, maybe it's by a deep strike or by strategic reserves or the Hyperphase roll ability, then you get to reroll all your hit rolls. So great. I mean, if you Hyperphase a 20-man warrior blob in, they're re-rolling everything. That's great with lethal hits in particular. You could just go fishing for them. Nice. The Osteoclave Fulcrum, they did actually preview this. This gives a unit deep strike. Magic. Absolutely magic. So now you don't have to come in from the table edge. If you put it on an Overlord with, again, 20 Necron warriors as an example, you can deep strike the unit in. Hyperphase them out, deep strike them in, hyperphase them out, deep strike them in. You just keep doing it until they're dead, or if they do ever die. That one's great, because you're not restricted to the table edges. I like that one. And the best thing is, in fact, let's talk about this one even more. We can still add 2 characters to a unit, don't forget. So you could have, say, a Plasmancer with the Risen Tyrant ability to have the full rerolls of the hit rolls. You could take your Overlord with the Osteoclave Fulcrum, have the deep strike ability, so you can have both of them combined to one single unit, which is cool. Dimensional Overseer lets you take an additional unit off the table with the Hyperphase ability, which I mentioned earlier. So instead of having 3 off the table at Strike Force games, you can do 4. I think it's a bit overkill. 3 is probably enough, but having 4 maybe lets you sort of relocate your whole army almost if you're, mid-game. And it's going to completely scramble your opponent's mind because you're just constantly taking things off. And don't forget, if they're in engagement range, they can't be taken off. So if your opponent is starting to tag units purposefully because they know your detachment ability, you're going to need to start moving them earlier than you think. Unless you're going melee, I suppose. But then detachment, you can still use melee units, don't get me wrong. But you're not really going to pull them off because if they're in engagement range, they're not coming off the ball. So it's a bit of a a bit of everything, this detachment. Now just remember though, when you are bringing them back in from the hyperphase, you've got the 9-inch restriction, so if you are using that enhancement and you're taking 4 off rather than 3, you've got to bear in mind the 9-inch restriction when you're coming back into the battlefield with deep strike, that is, and a 6-inch from the table edge with strategic reserves as well. Now, unless you're using one of the stratagems that we'll mention in a moment, there's a way of actually ignoring some of that stuff. Well, there's a few ways. We'll wait for that in a moment. Then the last one is the transfer node, which basically the bearer's unit gets to auto advance 6 inches. Now, the new Overlord with the translocation shroud has that already, so why you would just take him, I don't know. Not really sure about this node. I think I need to sort of play around with it, give it a bit of play testing before I can give you more feedback. I don't really know. Not really sure. I think you just take the Overlord. Right. Stratagems. So 4 out of 6 of these stratagems are related to the monolith. So according to this, you'll need one. According to me, you don't. We'll talk about that in a moment. First one, quantum deflection. It gives your vehicle a 4+ invulnerable save. So most of the vehicles within our codex have an invulnerable save. It's only really, I think it's the monolith, the obelisk, and the flyers. The flyers are dead. They're completely dead now. The obelisk has some life in it. I know a lot of you won't agree with that. I span a lot of you around in 9th edition and I told you to use it and you all loved it. This edition I'm not as convinced as I was, but I think it's okay. It's not as bad as we all think, but I think the monolith is better. So I don't want to push it just yet. Not just yet. The entropic damping stratagem. So while an enemy unit targets a titanic model, so again that is your monolith, your obelisk, it could be your seraptic heavy construct maybe. So if they target it within 18 inches, you make all their weapons hazardous for that phase. Not all that, to be honest with you. It's not all that. I know what else is hazardous, my throat going. But yeah, that stratagem, it's not all that for me. You're not doing that much damage. If it was that important, they can just re-roll hazard tests anyway. Not that big of a deal. The Hyperphasic recall for 2 CP, you can take an infantry unit that had a model destroyed from an enemy shooting attack or in the fight phase from a melee attack. You scoot them up and place them wholly within 6 inches of your monolith, so you'll be able to move enemy units. No, you'll be able to move your units. That would be cool if you can remove it, if you can move enemy units. But you're removing your unit, putting it somewhere else in the battlefield within 6 inches of a monolith, wholly within 6. And that's cool because the hyperphase ability doesn't allow you to scoop up units while they're in engagement range, but this ability does. So even if they just take 1 loss, bang. And it's actually really good if you've been multi-charged, which is actually a weakness to warriors in particular. If you get like lots of big, like, I go up against demons a lot. If you've got like a, I don't know, what would you call those things? The great unclean one, and then another of the big monsters, and they're sort of double teaming, maybe Bellicors in there as well, they're triple teaming you. There's only so many times you can do, like, you know, previously Undying Legions, the Ghost Art, Resolve. There's only so many times you can do that. Whereas with this one, as soon as you lose a model from one unit, that unit obviously finishes making its attacks, and you say, see you later. Then the other two, like Bellicor, Great Unclean One, or whatever it is, they don't get to fight because you've gone. See you later. So that one is decent. You need a monolith, of course. The monolith is likely getting targeted. We'll go over that as well in a moment. We've then got the Dimensional Corridor for 2 CP. Infantry units that are used at the Eternity Gate on your monolith get to charge this turn. So virtually they're going to pile out of the monolith. The charge is going to be very minimal. It's basically a guaranteed charge. Normally you can't charge when you're coming out of the Eternity Gate. So you're going to be using your Scorpion Destroyers, your Lich Guard, maybe Flayed ones. They're the kind of units that you use for this ability. But it is 2 CP, quite pricey. Reanimation Crypt, this one is an interesting one. So you can use reanimation protocols while off the board in reserves. When you're using your hyperphase ability, you'll be in reserves, of course. So maybe you've lost some models, you've gone into reserves. Now I'm glad they've clarified a bit of this, because I was actually ready to make a video on this, in fact today, on this very subject, because I'll explain where I'm getting this information from. So I think it's in strategic reserves or reserves. The last line of it says you can use abilities and rules even though units are in reserves. Now I would class reanimation protocols as an ability or a rule, so therefore you could do this in reserves. However, in the adding models to a units section in the rules commentary, it specifies that when you are adding a model, A, they must be within unit coherency, which you obviously can't do off the tabletop, and B, they must be joining a unit that started the phase on the battlefield, which obviously they weren't. So that makes adding models to a unit a no-go, unless you're using the stratagem, which allows you to do it off the table. I mean, it doesn't fully clarify everything though, because what if you're just healing a model? Maybe you've got a Locust Heavy Destroyer on 1 wound, and you heal it to 4 wounds. You've not added a model, so you've not broken any adding models to units rules. You're just using a rule off the battlefield, which it allows you to do according to the reserves ability, or reserves rules. So they're not fully clarified that part. I think we're okay to heal off the battlefield, just not add models, unless you're using the stratagem, then it completely kills it off and it's fine. So that's the way around that. I'd probably just use it anyway, especially on 1 wound model units like warriors, immortals, maybe Lich Guard as well with 2 wounds, because you want to keep them up and going. So that's the 5th one. The last one is probably the best out of the lot, Cosmic Precision. I love this one. Units that are arriving from Deep Strike or via the Hyperphasing ability, set up anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 3 inches away from enemy units. Now there's quite a few interesting things to do with this stratagem. First of all, imagine you took off some flayed ones and you put them in the Hyperphase and you brought them back in. They don't have Deep Strike, but they can arrive anywhere on the battlefield more than 3 inches away from enemy models. So they effectively, for that part, that battle round in particular, they kind of get Deep Strike, but it's a better Deep Strike. They don't do strategic reserves, even though they don't have Deep Strike. So it's a bit of a... They might clarify that and they might sort of nerf that, but as it's written, anywhere on the battlefield, more than 3 inches away from enemy units. The second reason why this is good... In fact, I need to end what this is about. So you can't charge. That's the one restriction. You can't then charge. So hold your thoughts there. You can't then 3-inch charge, bang, done. That's too easy. You could, however, surround a unit. You could block up an avenue. That's all cool things to do. But what I would personally like to do is get them onto an objective. Get them onto an objective. Maybe you've got Capture Enemy Outpost, which is worth 7 BP. You can do it within 3 inches. You pile a load of warriors in. Bosh. Done. 3 inches away. You've got the objective. Nice and easy. Maybe it's to... Well, it could be any objective, really. It could be... What's the one where you got to just take over an objective? Is it Overwhelming Force, or is it the other one? I always get them mixed up. So it could be that one. It could be to do actions, such as deploy teleport homers, investigate, signal, cleanse. There's loads of them that require an action. And maybe your opponent has guarded a certain area. Doesn't matter. 3 inches isn't going to stop us. Or 9 inches, rather, isn't going to stop us, because we've got the 3-inch thing. So we use that. So that is... Out of all of them, that is probably the best one. When I'm playing against Chaos Demons who have this, they also have this stratagem, it's a pain in the arse because you can't defend against it. You really can't. It's impossible. So this one at the moment is my go-to detachment, I believe. I feel like it's my playstyle. It's sneaky. I mean, I've always loved Ophidian Destroyers for this very reason. With their Tunneling Horrors ability, I used to pull them off the battlefield at the end of your opponent's turn. They can't do anything about it. Then you'll bring them in, but you'll bring them in after seeing your new cards. So you get your cards. Oh wow, I've got Deploy Teleport Homer. I've got a unit to do it with Deep Strike. There they go. They go and do it. You just clear the card, done. Job done. Beautiful. That's why I like it. And this time we're not just doing it with 1 Ophidian unit, we're now doing it with 3 of any unit. And it literally is any unit. It could be a Catan Shard. They can come in and fight something. It could be the monolith itself. It could be the Silent King. It could be Lich Guard. It could be warriors. It could be one little Hexmark Destroyer doing Investigate Signal with the Core Knight. It could be anything. It's great. Really is good. So secondaries are the key thing for this detachment. And as I already mentioned with the last stratagem, the Cosmic Precision, your opponent is going to really struggle to screen against you. If they think, yep, I've got a nice 9-inch bubble guarding my area, it don't matter. 3 inches and we're in. Bosh. Done. Now, the monolith is a big talking point here. Most, if not all, the stratagems were relating to the monolith. I don't think you personally need it, because if you do take it, it's going to be target number 1. Your opponent is going to go for it with everything. Once you lose it, all your stratagem links are gone. You can't be using hardly any of your stratagems. I mean, if you haven't got it, you're not getting them anyway, I suppose, but you're getting all the points. You're saving on all those points that it costs for a monolith, whatever it costs in the codex. Currently, the monolith costs us 350 points, so that's what you save. Now, maybe your playstyle is to take the monolith, but it's a bait. You want to soak up as much damage as possible, maybe using that 4+ invulnerable save stratagem, quantum deflection. You're soaking up damage for 1 turn, 2 turns, while all your other units are scoring, killing stuff, and eventually your monolith will die, but you're in a better position. Maybe that is your game plan, maybe that is it. But really, the monolith and all the stratagems are there to be moving units around, but the Eternity Gate, the Dimensional Corridor, that's the Eternity Gate in fact, or the other one which was the Hyperphasic Recall, that's for the monolith, to be moving units around. But with our Hyperphase ability, we have it naturally with the detachment. We don't necessarily need a monolith to move units around. So I don't think the monolith is a go-to must-have for this detachment. It's a great thing to have, but I don't think you need it. I'd rather say 350 points, get myself a Transcendent Catan or a Nightbringer, Void Dragon, whatever. Get something along those lines that can actually do some damage, pull it off the battlefield, bring it back on again. That's what I do. I mean, even the Void Dragon, coming in 3 inches away and using its, all of its range attacks, come at me. It's good enough. It's got the new Field of Pains. The Catans have got a 5+ Field of Pain now. I don't know if they've still retained their halving damage thing. You'll have to let me know down in the comments below. But yeah, this is definitely my go-to. I'm most excited about this one. I think this is our strongest suit. The Canoptic one I think is also decent, but this one is for me the go-to. But guys, let me know. Is this your go-to? If not, what is? And also put down your strategies for the Hyperphasing ability for the Hypercrypt Legion. Guys, thank you all for watching. See you in the next one.